Mark Levin here. After any presidential election, I take time to reevaluate my own financial investments. That's why I continue to invest in gold for help with my financial protection. When it comes to gold, I only trust Advantage Gold. They're a top gold company in America, and that's who I turn to for my own gold purchases. Call them now at 800-900-8000. That's 800-900-8000 for a free gold investment kit. And see if you qualify for up to $1,000 in free silver. That's 800-900-8000. And tell them Mark Levin sent you. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professional.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, America. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. Welcome. The Hate America attorneys general in blue states. The Hate America press. Well, they want you to believe that birthright citizenship is right there in the Constitution. I've even heard some of our friends on cable and on radio say it's in the Constitution, it's going to be tough to turn this around. It's not in the Constitution. It's not anywhere in the Constitution. It's not in the history of the 14th Amendment. In fact, quite the contrary. The author of the 1866 Civil Rights Act, the first of the Civil Rights Acts in American history and after the Civil War, had a lot of influence on the makeup of the 14th Amendment and specifically said it had nothing to do with aliens. We have a Supreme Court decision at the end of the 18th century, which I'll get into as well. Stick with me. Our problem is going to be activist judges and justices. Unfortunately, now most judges and justices are activists, even the ones, in many instances, who claim to be originalists, to be reading the text of the Constitution. Or they fall back to the position that the country's gotten used to this, and we don't want to create a radicalization of any policy position, and so forth and so on. Why don't you just read the Constitution and, damn it, just follow it? You're a judge. And so this is already prepared to attack. They want to get a temporary restraining order on President Trump's executive order. Our friend Alan Dershowitz has said an executive order cannot reverse a constitutional amendment. Of course, it's not in the Constitution, so an executive order should be effective enough to end it. But I tell you again, this won't be about what the Constitution actually says. There will be an activist effort. I hope it fails, but it may well succeed, to try and pretend that the Supreme Court has created precedent and try and pretend it's always been there, and then say we're not going to reverse course. It would be so inhumane rather. There's nothing in the Constitution about birthright citizenship. The idea that if you're just born in the United States, you're a citizen is a sham, and it's always been a sham. Democrats and the media claim it comes from the 14th Amendment, and they're lying. I've talked about that here on Fox, on Blaze, how even on Meet the Depressed, the phony moderator, another left-wing Democrat dressed up as a journalist in a $12 dress, she only read part of the language in the 14th Amendment to mislead everybody who was watching Meet the Depressed, which is why I tell you, why watch Meet the Depressed? What was the purpose of the 14th Amendment? Well, what were the purposes of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments? And why do we call them the post-Civil War amendments? They were specifically aimed at the just freed black slaves, no longer slaves. They were amendments passed to ensure the rights and privileges that every American enjoys would now be enshrined in our Constitution to protect and promote citizenship for black people, because we still had states that were resisting. And I must remind you that 3/4 of the House and Senate, 3/4 of the states are necessary to ratify a constitutional amendment, and that's what they did. And if some of these southern states or Confederate states hadn't voted for it, they were not going to be allowed back into the Union. The 1866 Civil Rights Act came before the 14th Amendment, and the 1866 Civil Rights Act was the precursor to the 14th Amendment, conveying equal rights, the right to vote, and so forth and so on the newly freed black individuals who had been black slaves. The problem was, after Abraham Lincoln's assassination, Andrew Johnson was president. He was a Democrat. He actually supported the Civil War, but he was not big on conferring equal rights on black people. And so Congress, which was, made up of a significant majority in the House and Senate of Republicans who had supported abolition and so forth, they passed the 1866 Civil Rights Act. Johnson resisted it. He wasn't going to enforce it. And they passed it over his objections. Thus, the people who were behind the Civil Rights Act of 1866, they decided we need to amend the Constitution. In addition to the 13th and 15th Amendments that they had already been developing, thus came the 14th Amendment, applying due process and equal protection to black people that already existed in the 5th Amendment of the Constitution, but applying it to the states through the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment, the relevant clause that we're talking about here, was intended to ensure that black people were emancipated in every respect as citizens of the United States. It had nothing to do with immigration, legal or illegal. It never came up. In fact, that's not correct. The one time it came up, it was dismissed as irrelevant. That's the legislative history. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 4, that's what we're talking about. Congress shall have power to establish uniform rules of naturalization, okay? Congress has never passed a federal statute that confers birthright citizenship. Never. It's not in the Constitution. It's not in federal law. It's not in the legislative history. And yet here it is. Why? Because Democrats, some Republicans, the bureaucracy, they see birthright citizenship as a means to an end. Birthright citizenship is the argument, is the position, is the policy the Democrat Party holds on to because they want monopoly power for all time. They don't care if it's foreigners or not. They don't care if it's foreigners or not. And that's why you have these state attorneys general bringing the cases that they're bringing to try and stop it. They're going to form shop, try and get a district court that'll help them. District court, they're looking for a temporary restraining order nationwide from one federal judge. These federal district judges, I think there's 1,000 or 1,100 of them. They just need one. Then you go through the appellate process and so forth. And so that's what they're going to be doing the entire time. This is going to be a tough one because of the mindset of the judiciary and the fact that so many people are affected by this. I mean, what the court could do, if it wants to be practical as opposed to constitutional, is say from this point forward there is no birthright citizenship, that it has been conveyed and conferred on individuals who are already here and they've relied on it. That would be better than nothing. As they say, half a loaf is better than no loaf at all. Right? So, but I want to get into what does the Constitution say? If it doesn't say birthright citizenship, what exactly does it say? And we'll get into that, and I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Did you see what the Federal Reserve did literally days after President Trump's victory? It's lowered interest rates by a quarter. Do you know why it did that? It's worried about the economy. It's worried about the fact that jobs aren't being created. We're seeing all kinds of shifts in our portfolios, and it's important to stay aware. That's why I'm urging everyone to diversify and consider gold as one of your financial shields. Now, gold has weathered every kind of economic downturn throughout history. I want you to call Advantage Gold. They're the best of the best, folks. I've dealt with all of them. They're the best. They're my gold company. 1-800-900-8000. Get a free gold investment kit to see how you can get started with gold. I recommend Advantage Gold to anyone who's serious about protecting their wealth, and that's you. Call 800-900-8000 for your free gold investment kit, and you could even qualify for up to $1,000 in free silver. That's 800-900-8000. Call them now. Tell them Mark Levin sent you. You'll be very happy with them. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professional. What does the relevant section of your Constitution, the 14th Amendment, say about citizenship? Quote, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and the state wherein they reside. So what is this phrase, and subject to the jurisdiction thereof? It sounds like our courts, our Congress, the media, the ethnic front groups, all pretend it doesn't exist, or they try and interpret it in a way that makes it useless. All persons born or naturalized in the United States are citizens of the United States and the state wherein they reside. That's not what it says. It says all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Now, when this was originally ratified, they excluded American Indians. That is, individuals who lived in this country, Native Americans, who they didn't consider, quote-unquote, citizens of America because they were citizens of a tribe. That's how they interpreted jurisdiction thereof. Can you imagine people coming into this country, as an example, illegally, having children? That their amendment would be so spun, so twisted to apply to that? It doesn't apply to that. It was intended to effectively reverse the Dred Scott decision of 1857. That basically held that slaves or black Americans from African descent would never be eligible for U.S. citizenship because they're black. This amendment was aimed at fixing that once and for all. But it was never intended to be a blank board for anybody who comes into the country, happens to have a kid, or purposely has a kid, and all of a sudden, oh, you're in the jurisdiction of the United States. Now, some of you might think, well, legally they are in the jurisdiction of the United States. That's not what they meant either. Jurisdiction, meaning allegiance to the United States, part of the system of the United States. That's what they meant by jurisdiction. So if you have diplomats who visit the United States and they happen to have children here, nobody claims that they're automatically American citizens. If you're a tourist and you come to the United States, you happen to have a child here, nobody's claiming they're automatically American citizens. So why would we say that if you're an illegal immigrant who comes to the United States and have a child here, that's automatically a birthright citizen? Notice, birthright citizens, that phrase doesn't even exist. was never uttered. Had nothing to do with this amendment. Subject to the jurisdiction thereof. The jurisdiction thereof. If you're here illegally and you have a child, you don't get to determine. It's not like I get to unilaterally determine that I'm subject to the jurisdiction of the United States any more than a diplomat does, or a tourist does, or somebody on a student visa does, or anything of the kind. And they have a child. And so there's literally nothing that supports this. Nothing. Zero. Now, so the Trump administration has put together an executive order that reads as follows. By the authority vested in me as president by the constitutional laws of the United States, it is hereby ordered, Section 1, purpose. The privilege of United States citizenship is a priceless and profound gift. 14th Amendment states all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and the state wherein they reside. That provision rightly repudiated the Supreme Court of the United States' shameful decision in Dred Scott versus Sanford in 1857, which misinterpreted the Constitution as permanently, as I said, excluding people of African descent from eligibility for U.S. citizenship solely based on their race. But the 14th Amendment has never been interpreted to extend citizenship universally to everyone born within the United States. It has always excluded from birthright citizenship persons who were born in the United States but not subject to the jurisdiction thereof, quote unquote. So consistent with this understanding, the Congress has further specified through legislation that, quote, a person born in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof is a national, a citizen of the United States at birth, generally mirroring the 14th Amendment's text. Now, among the categories of individuals born in the U.S. and not subject to the jurisdiction thereof, the privilege of the United States citizenship does not automatically extend to persons born in the United States. One, when that person's mother was unlawfully present in the United States and the father was not a U.S. citizen or lawful permanent resident at the time of said person's birth, that is a child of illegal aliens. Two, when that person's mother's presence in the United States at the time of said person's birth was lawful but temporary, such as, but not limited to, visiting the United States under the auspices of a visa waiver program. This is what I just pointed out. Or visiting on a student, work, or tourist visa. And the father was not a United States citizen or lawful permanent resident at the time of said person's birth. The policy, Section 2. It is the policy of the United States that no department or agency of the United States shall issue documents regarding United States citizenship or accept documents issued by state, local, or other governments or authorities purporting to recognize U.S. citizenship to persons when that person's mother was unlawfully present, and they go through the same routine. Mother means the immediate female biological progenitor, they write. Father means the immediate male biological progenitor. Nothing in this order shall be construed to impair or otherwise affect the authority, and it goes on. So it's a straightforward executive order. Again, our friend Alan Dershowitz, a great guy, smart as hell. When he says you can't reverse an amendment with an executive order, yes, but you can reverse a non-supported practice with an executive order, and that's what we're talking about here. It's not in the Constitution. It never has been. Unless a court or the Supreme Court rewrites the Constitution in the 14th Amendment and includes it in there. And I'm sick and tired of these courts amending our Constitution. We have an amendment process, two of them. They're very difficult, but they exist. And it doesn't include judges or even a group of justices amending the Constitution. There is no birthright citizenship in our governing document of any kind, in our legislative history of any kind, in any statute whatsoever. I'll be right back. The markets are volatile. They're shooting up wildly only to drop without warning. The Fed just cut rates yet again, this time by a quarter point. Why? Because the Federal Reserve is not confident the economy is strong. In fact, last month only 12,000 jobs were created, all of them in the government. That's why I'm telling you again, diversification is crucially important. And diversification with gold is what I do. And the company I use, and I've used many, the best one is Advantage Gold. Call them now at 800-900-8000 for a free gold investment kit to see how gold can help you diversify your investments and take advantage now. Now, gold has been helping to protect and grow wealth for people for thousands of years. And in these times, it can be more crucial than ever. When it comes to gold, I trust Advantage Gold. They're one of the top gold companies in America. They're who I turn to when I purchase gold. Call them now, 800-900-8000. Call 800-900-8000 now for a free gold investment kit to see how gold can help you with your investment portfolio, a.k.a. your bank accounts, your paycheck. And when you do, you could qualify for $1,000 in free silver. That's 800-900-8000. Folks, don't wait. Call them now, 800-900-8000, and tell them Mark Levin sent you. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professional.
This is the nation's town hall meeting, and you can join in at 877-381-3811.
Now, in order to get where they want to go on this birthright citizenship, they will either read the clause and the jurisdiction thereof out of the Constitution, or they will interpret it in a way that makes it meaningless, and in a way that has no historical context or attachment whatsoever. Well, they're here, so they're subject to the jurisdiction. Well, they didn't need to say that, then, did they? Did they? And yet that interpretation is not based on anything. Anything. There's no, not solid ground, no ground whatsoever. But what they have going for them is the mindset of how people interpret the Constitution. You know, we had a federal court the other day, actually a few weeks back, that said DACA is unconstitutional. It took them a while. But Barack Obama thought it was unconstitutional. He created, by the wave of a magic wand, and then Congress did, an entire regime for illegal aliens who were born during a certain period of time as youths, and they're no longer youths in most of these cases, came into the United States and then conferred on them certain rights. Certain rights of citizenship, certain rights to stay in the country. What is it based on? Was there any statutory authority? No. Was there any constitutional authority? No. He just did it. They just did it. Court said, you can't do that. That's unconstitutional. Has anything changed? No. Now they'll appeal it. Then it'll go to the Supreme Court. So if you don't have courts that have fidelity to the rule of law, the Constitution, to basic English language, text, how to interpret it, you have lawlessness. So if any court rules that birthright citizenship is or is implied or was intended, or now that it's been in practice for all these decades, it's got to be accepted as some kind of reality, then you know that's lawless, that the courts are lawless. And let me say this. When courts are lawless, we have no more reason to abide by their decision than they do by not abiding to the Constitution. You get my point? If they're not going to adhere to the Constitution, why should we adhere to something even lesser? That is, their damn opinion. If their opinion's not based on the Constitution, then what do we care what their opinion is? They might as well be some schmuck on cable TV. They're just giving an opinion. It's the way they tried to misinterpret the 14th Amendment when it came to Donald Trump on the ballot. When it was limited to the Civil War. People who participated in an insurrection against the country during the period of the Civil War, who served in the Confederacy. Again, this was a post-Civil War amendment. Had nothing to do with January 6th. They tried their best. They almost got away with it. I warned people it was coming, but we had certain really good legal analysts saying, oh, that's just hysteria. No, it's reality. This is what they do on the left. So they're not just of two minds, they're of multiple minds, beyond two. Number one, they hate the Constitution, they tell us, because it was written by a bunch of white supremacist slave owner plantation owners. Of course, it's idiotic, but they say that. Number two, if you don't interpret the Constitution the way they do, then they say you're lawless. You don't support the Constitution. Wait a minute, I thought you hated the Constitution. You get my point? Number three, if you do, in fact, cite the Constitution and seek to uphold the Constitution, you're called a right-winger. Wait a minute, I'm so confused. Are we for the Constitution or against it? Are we for interpreting the language or against it? What are we for? You're for the old communist maxim, the ends justify the means. That's all. We'll go through the process, but you got to come up with the answer that we demand. That's how that works. That's what they mean. And their people in the media are dumber than they are. Dumber than they are. Really quite repulsive. Here's Ellie Mistel, the national justice correspondent on MSLSD. Listen to this one. Cut 6, go.
The other problem is that even though I do think that it is clearly unconstitutional on the merits, there is no doubt about that. Yeah. When does the court get around to it?
Simply no doubt about that. No doubt that what Trump's trying to do is unconstitutional. There's just no doubt about it. Clearly on the merits. And what would that be? Go ahead.
But who has standing? That means who has the right to sue? Under some interpretations, it's not going to be until one of these babies is born in this country and denied their citizenship rights before we have a perfect plaintiff to even sue that. Now, I think there are better arguments that people have standing right now, but I'm not one of the justices paid for by Harlan Crow in the Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court...
See, this guy's a punk. He's always been a punk. Hates the Constitution, in my view. It's a punk. Saying, well, I'm not one of the justices paid off by this billionaire. This is how they talk. But you see, he doesn't make the case, does he? He doesn't make the case for this, for his position. He can't make the case for his... He's talking about standing. What are you going to do? Have to wait for one of these people to grow up? The idiot doesn't even understand standing. A parent could bring a case, supposedly. A state that doesn't want to enforce it can bring a case, supposedly. There are ways to get standing. And so this guy's an idiot, which is exactly why he's on MSLSD. It's filled with idiots. Go ahead.
Getting to the merits of the case, which might give Trump anywhere from 10 months to a year to 2 years to do as much...
This guy's a hysterical buffoon. We don't even care what he thinks. Then we have Rob Bonita, the Attorney General of California. I'm sure he's a Sharpie, this guy, when it comes to the Constitution. Maybe the Soviet Constitution, not the American Constitution. Cut 5, go.
The president did make a promise on birthright citizenship and revoking it, and I made a promise too, and I'm keeping it, that I will see you in court when you break the law and violate the U.S. Constitution. That promise applies here, and it applies
slow down there, Sherlock. So now Trump has broken the Constitution. I could bet these guys $1 million, $10 million, $10, dinner, to show us the constitutional language. There is none. Constitutional history. There is none. But you see, Trump has violated the Constitution. Right. The Constitution, which we're supposed to hate in the first place. Right? I guess along with the Bill of Rights. I guess along with the 14th Amendment. Can you imagine? The Civil War is over. There's destitution all throughout the country, not just the South, but the North as well. They're trying to grapple with still differences that they have. The decision is made by the body politic. We need these amendments to the Constitution, the 14th Amendment, among other things, to apply. The Fifth Amendment, due process, equal protection, the right to vote, equality to former black slaves. And the Democrats interpret that to mean illegal aliens. Illegal aliens. They can't tell you how that came to be. They can't tell you where it is in the Constitution. It's an invisible ink right there next to the abortion clause. And yet they talk fast and they tell you this is where we are. And we even have conservatives who are saying, yes, it's in the Constitution. No, it's not in the Constitution. The problem is going to be activist judges and justices who are not going to want to fix this. That's going to be the problem. But the fact of the matter is, here's Donald Trump trying to uphold the Constitution. Here's the Trump administration interpreting the text and the history and the language of the Constitution of the United States, the 14th Amendment, doing it accurately, doing it correctly. And they're accused of violating the Constitution by the very people who hate the Constitution to begin with. Yes. Birthright citizenship. And look how the Democrats fight to the last man, the last woman, the last trans, the last whatever, for illegal aliens, for people who are born here, have no right to be here, let alone citizens. Citizens. Crazy, isn't it? Yeah, it's crazy. But remember who they are, the Democrats. Ends justify the means. They're not about the rule of law. They're not even about these kids. They're about power. Now that I've said it, you'll hear it all over cable, but they're about power. And power for them, power in numbers, is foreigners coming into the country, legal and illegal, but especially illegal. So the illegal aliens who come into the country, who the Democrat Party works very, very hard to slobber over and provide them with benefits and so forth, that when they get citizenship, will vote Democrat. It's that simple. It's not complicated. As the New York Times once said, to reshape the electorate, that's all. The hell with the country. The party comes first. It's the way it works. So they're going to fight to the death on birthright citizenship. Their courts are going to try and do what they can to help the Democrat Party. The Supreme Court, the problem we have with some of the members of the court is some of them are just gutless wonders. And as gutless wonders, they will abandon the Constitution, as John Roberts did when it came to Obamacare, as John Roberts did when it came to the appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court to fix what took place in New York. You've got him, you've got Barrett. These people are not constitutionalists. They're not originalists. They're wet finger in the windists. And they care very much about what the dying Washington Post and the Holocaust-denying New York Slimes have to say. And so it's a matter of twisting language or pretending language doesn't exist or ignoring the entire history behind the 14th Amendment and its birth through the 1866 Civil Rights Act. You have to ignore all those things, all of them, to reach a conclusion that there is something called birthright citizenship. There's not. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Did you see what the Federal Reserve did literally days after President Trump's victory? It's lowered interest rates by a quarter. Do you know why it did that? It's worried about the economy. It's worried about the fact that jobs aren't being created. We're seeing all kinds of shifts in our portfolios, and it's important to stay aware. That's why I'm urging everyone to diversify and consider gold as one of your financial shields. Now, gold has weathered every kind of economic downturn throughout history. I want you to call Advantage Gold. They're the best of the best, folks. I've dealt with all of them. They're the best. They're my gold company. 1-800-900-8000. Get a free gold investment kit to see how you can get started with gold. I recommend Advantage Gold to anyone who's serious about protecting their wealth, and that's you. Call 800-900-8000 for your free gold investment kit, and you could even qualify for up to $1,000 in free silver. That's 800-900-8000. Call them now. Tell them Mark Levin sent you. You'll be very happy with them. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professional. I want you to realize that what President Trump is doing across the board is unprecedented, courageous, and more conservative than anything George H.W. Bush, George W. Bush ever did and ever would do. Whether people want to hear this or not, including President Trump, we now know that the three most conservative presidents, The three most conservative presidents for 100 years, for a century: Calvin Coolidge, Ronald Reagan, and Donald Trump. Some of my brothers may oppose tariffs. I'm not a big tariff guy. I don't think you slap tariffs on everything. But back in the 1920s, conservatives did. In the 1950s, conservatives did. Yes. They believed in tariffs. I believe in tariffs strongly when it comes to countries like China and other countries that are our enemies or that are cheating us blind. There's no reason to tolerate that. There's no reason to put up with it. So if there are countries that are ripping us off, that are underselling us because of government subsidies to their businesses, or because they have tariffs in place, yeah, we ought to whack them with tariffs. In communist China, we ought to whack with tariffs anyway. They have currency manipulation, which means it's much more expensive for us to ship things to China. They have quotas preventing us from shipping things to China. They steal our technology. They steal 51% of every American business that settles there. So why wouldn't we place substantial tariffs on them? The point is we have to build our own infrastructure, develop our own parallel industries, because we've helped build theirs and we rely on them, including for medicines and certain material. That has to change, and that's what Trump's trying to do. Change it. Change it. Trump will be and is the most conservative president since Reagan, and Reagan the most conservative president since Coolidge. Now, I happen to know, because we've talked about it, that Donald Trump's one of his favorite presidents was McKinley. McKinley was a big tariff guy. He was a governor. He was a senator. When he was in Congress, he pushed for tariffs. When he was a governor, he pushed for tariffs. When he was president, he imposed very severe tariffs. And yes, there was significant economic growth. But there was also a downside at one point. The country was in a depression, not due to tariffs. In fact, McKinley and his supporters would argue as a result of tariffs, he got us out of the depression. But remember those robber barons you were taught about, and TV tells us about, and the leftists tell us about, and some conservatives, big this and big that and big this? We didn't have a Federal Reserve. And so where would McKinley go to get the capital needed to make sure that our economic system wouldn't collapse? Not as a result of him or tariffs again, but as a result of what had occurred before him. He went to the so-called robber barons, to Morgan, to Rockefeller, to Carnegie, and a few other billionaires who today could easily have been, Rockefeller today would be a trillionaire, just so you know. And they loaned the United States back then about $7 or $8 billion, which was enormous, and saved our economy. Those robber barons, you know. Today we just print it. There's no gold standard. There's no silver standard. There's no peanut standard. There's no standard at all. And so print. That's what they do. That's what they do. So for my fellow constitutional conservatives, look at Donald Trump upholding the Constitution, trying to get us back to the original meaning and the original text of the Constitution. No Bush has ever done that. None of these rhinos have ever supported that. In fact, they're going to oppose him for totally non-constitutional reasons. I'll be right back. This segment of the podcast is exclusively sponsored by Pure Talk. Pure Talk offers great coverage and can save your family money on your wireless bill every single month. Go to puretalk.com to find the plan that's right for you. Thank you again for listening, and thank you so much for this sponsorship, Pure Talk.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, America. Mark Levin here. Our number, hello, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. Some good back and forth. Russ Vaught, OMB director. I believe he was OMB director before. He's very solid. He's up for OMB director again. That apparently requires the confirmation process. Bernie Moreno, who's a great brand new senator. Isn't he terrific? Ohio, you should be very proud. Well, does giving illegal aliens health care help the American people? Cut 7, go.
When you house illegals in this country, people who are not invited here like I was, like my family was, when you house them in luxury hotels at a cost of $6,000 per month per room, does that help working class Americans?
No.
When you give health care to those very illegals, when Americans don't have the health care that they need, does that help working class Americans?
No.
When you provide food to illegals, and in some cases, when they don't like the food, you give them $1,000 prepaid credit cards, does that help working class American citizens?
No, sir.
When you give sex change operations to illegals, does that help working class Americans?
No.
When you offer DEI courses and instead of being promoted based on merit, and rather you have this insane move to DEI, does that help working class Americans?
No.
And when you fly immigrants from foreign countries to the United States on private jets, does that help working class Americans?
No.
And then, of course, the Stalinist, there's several, but he's a big one, Bernie the Red. He jumps in. He seems to be at every one of these confirmation hearings, doesn't he? Cut 8, go.
Mr. Vogt, we are living in a moment in American history where at a time when 60% of our people are living paycheck to paycheck, we have more income and wealth inequality than we've ever had.
I'm so sick of the Marxist crap. It's the Marxist crap who got us where we are right now. Bernie Sanders got us to this point. Elizabeth Warren got us to this point. AOC, Tlaib, Omar got us to this point. All the radical kook leftists have gotten us to this point. Big government, massive regulations, overtaxation, redistribution of wealth, economic dislocation, open borders, jobs taken away from American citizens. We can go on and on and on. And yet they keep pointing the finger at everybody else when it is they who are responsible. If we have 1,000 billionaires, that doesn't help 60% of the people who are working paycheck to paycheck. No. They're not the ones putting the shoulder to the 60% of the people, as he puts it, who are living paycheck to paycheck. If you don't want to buy something from Microsoft, don't buy it. If you don't want to buy Tesla, don't buy it. These are how these guys become multi-billionaires. We're talking about entrepreneurs, not people who've inherited money. If you don't want to buy certain things, you don't buy it. You're unaffected. It's not a limited pie, so if we destroy these billionaires over here, suddenly the 60% won't have to live paycheck to paycheck. I want you folks living to paycheck to look at your paycheck stub. Who's taking money out of your paycheck? Is it Elon Musk? Is it Apple? I don't even like some of these people. Who is it? Is it Bill Gates? No, it's the government. Local government, state government, county government, federal government. They got all kinds of programs where they take your money and give it to somebody else. These companies, again, these corporatists, some of whom I like, many of whom I don't, they're not the ones setting economic policy with open borders, people taking your jobs. They're not the ones setting economic policies with crazy so-called minimum wages that put people out of work so you can't get a job. They're not the ones that have all these bankrupt programs that you're subsidizing, and yet they take the money out of your paycheck. They claim it's in some kind of an insurance plan or trust fund when they've robbed it all. That inflation that you're experiencing, no company creates inflation. Government creates inflation. Those property taxes you're paying, no billionaire created those property taxes. Your localities, your counties, they created the property taxes, the millage rates, and all the rest of it. The sales taxes, where government always takes a piece of the action, no matter what you purchase, that's the government. And so when you cut right down to it, when you're trying to buy food, when you're trying to buy a home and live on a property, it's the government that'll foreclose on your house. It's the government that demands you pay taxes, not in every state, but most, on your food. The government. And Bernie Sanders' answer is more government. Just get the billionaires. If we take out every single billionaire, take every penny they have, that's not going to help you pay taxes. That's not going to help inflation. That's not going to help you make ends meet. That's not going to prevent you from living paycheck to paycheck. It's irrelevant. And this is what the Marxists do. They want power. That's all they care about. And the dumber they are, the more power they want. Go ahead.
On more wealth in the bottom half of American society. People are struggling to put food on the table. Very rich are getting much richer. We have heard from our Republican colleagues in the House that they think it is a good idea.
I just wish that one of our Republicans had enough intelligence or big enough gonads to just once confront this guy and his Marxist ideology and explain why people are living paycheck to paycheck. And what would he do about these billionaires who invent things and develop things, create assembly lines and hire people and pay them? And pay their medical care and their pensions. You know, unions wouldn't exist but for business. Business wouldn't exist but for capitalism. It's a funny thing, isn't it? Go ahead.
Forward to provide massive tax breaks to the billionaire class. And
there's not massive tax breaks for the billionaire class. What are the massive tax breaks for the billionaire class? I'm no billionaire. I'm not a special pleader for them, but I'm sick and tired of the Marxist bullcrap. What are these massive tax breaks? Look at Tesla. Look at all the people they hire. Look at SpaceX. Look at all the good they're doing and all the people they hire. And I'm not even talking about downstream, the products that they have to buy, the machines they have to buy, the materials that they have to buy to produce things, all the way down the chain. From the very beginning, raw materials, all the way to the end user, they're creating jobs. They're creating wealth. What is Bernie Sanders doing? Does government create wealth? How does government create wealth? Government takes wealth. Government redistributes wealth. Government taxes wealth. It regulates wealth. It doesn't create anything except bureaucracy and red tape. This is why when every president, there aren't many, but when every conservative president slashes regulations and slashes taxes, you have massive economic growth. And that makes Bernie Sanders angry, too, because it cuts against his Marxist socialist ideology. Go ahead.
By cutting back on Medicaid. And I know that you are more than aware that Medicaid not only provides health care to tens of millions of lower-income people, but 2 out of 3 people in nursing homes in America, elderly people, are on Medicaid.
Yeah, Medicaid, it's great. It's going broke, like Medicare and Social Security. Are you aware that because we spent over $2 trillion on the phony Inflation Reduction Act, the Green New Deal, that money could have gone into Medicaid to take care of people in nursing homes? Are you aware that because of your massive debt, we have inflation, so the price of nursing homes and caring for elderly people have gone through the roof? Are you aware of any of it? Go ahead.
You are going to be...
shut up, you bastard. I'm sick of this guy. Next thing you know, he'll be backing Hamas. Oh, wait, he does. Next thing you know, he'll be back in the old Soviet Union. Oh, wait, he did. Next thing you know, he'll be backing the autocratic genocidal regime in Cuba. Oh, he did. Next thing you know, that's right, this guy's a sick bastard. Now let's move on. Well, first we're going to take a break. I'm looking at this, and I do want to move on. Let's take a break. We've got a number of other issues, and we've got other articles I want to cover because they're relevant to what's going on today. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
You voted big government out and efficient government in. Well, now it's time to trim the fat from big wireless. If you're still on the other big name providers, I have one question. Why? Pure Talk, my cell phone company, gives you the exact same service on the exact same towers with better customer service because they're based right here in the United States, all for half the cost. That's right. There's simply no need to spend $85 or $100 per person on your wireless bill, not when you can get unlimited talk, text, and 15 gigs of data with mobile hotspot. Just $35 a month. My friends, the average family of four could save about $1,000 a year with Pure Talk while enjoying one of America's most dependable 5G networks. So cut the fat out of your wireless bill. Switch to Pure Talk by going to puretalk.com/Levin. Again, puretalk.com/LEVIN, and you'll save an additional 50% off your first month with Pure Talk, America's wireless company. President Trump is remaking the federal bureaucracy right before your eyes. People said it couldn't be done. People said it wouldn't be done. He's going into certain departments and doing it. He's doing it overall in the federal bureaucracy. He's eliminated every single DEI job in the federal bureaucracy and put the people who have served in those positions on paid leave as they figure out what they can do with them. Epoch Times has it right by Mark Tapscott. President Donald Trump wasted no time following his January 20 swearing in to sign dozens of executive orders, including seven specifically aimed at fundamentally changing the culture, costs, and size of the federal workforce. Ladies and gentlemen, this is revolutionary. Absolutely revolutionary. Most immediately, Trump ordered the 2.3 million career civil service governmental employees to report for work at their official duty stations, ending the teleworking started in 2020 because of the COVID-19 pandemic. A second order directed federal officials to freeze all hiring for positions vacant as of January 20 and bar the creation of new jobs. The federal government hired 631,639 new civilian workers from 2020 to 2024. An annual average of 126,000, according to FedScope. The same order directed the directors of the White House Office of Management and Budget and the U.S. Office of Personnel Management to work with newly created Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, D-O-G-E, to, quote, submit a plan to reduce the size of the federal government's workforce through efficiency improvements and attrition. The order didn't specify how many jobs are to be eliminated, but they can deal with that later. Several of the remaining 5 orders on the civil service are already hotly contested by congressional Democrats, with large numbers of federal bureaucrats in their districts and state, as well as by professional associations and labor unions. Well, of course. The most controversial, said to be, is the return of Schedule F, an executive order that Trump signed in 2020, only weeks before losing his re-election campaign to Biden, supposedly, now renamed as the Schedule Policy/Career. Schedule Policy/Career. That is, the measure is needed, according to the Trump White House, because removing an incompetent government worker typically takes at least a year and a half, and it can go on much longer. Only 41% of civil service supervisors are confident they can remove an employee who engaged in subordination or serious misconduct. Even fewer supervisors, 26%, are confident that they can remove an employee for poor performance, the order stated. I can tell you my own experience when I was the number 2 deputy solicitor at the Department of Interior, the number 2 lawyer there, that we needed to remove an individual there in our department. We had almost 300 or slightly over 300 lawyers working for us. It was a massive operation. And that's just in Maine Interior Department of Washington. We also had satellite offices and regional offices. With appeals that are in law, in the bureaucracy, then appeals to federal court. It took us over 2 years, Mr. Producer, over 2 years to remove one employee. The scheduled policy career reforms concern the approximately 7,000 members of the senior executive service, that is the most senior level, under presidential appointees, who earn between $180,000 and $246,000 annually. Do you know we have civil servants that earn $250,000 a year? How come Bernie Sanders never talks about them? These positions are the top policy-making jobs that career service employees can occupy. The order could cover additional positions below the senior executive service level. Now, the fourth order from Trump complemented the third because it established a direct line of accountability for the senior executive service, highest level managers, through the respective agency heads to the president. The order directs that all SES, that's what they're called, all SES managers must implement the president's and the administration's agenda and policies. It also abolishes the current Executive Resources Board, the ERB, which oversee the CES managers in particular departments and agencies. It replaces them with new panels with majorities made up of politically appointed officials. You see, elections are supposed to have consequences, not just with policy pronouncements, but the actual implementation. And what Donald Trump knows, and what whomever his advisors know, is that the bureaucracy kills stuff when it comes from a Republican or a conservative. It kills it. It smothers it. And so what they did is they eliminated the so-called Executive Resources Board filled with civil servants, and they created their own panels within each department, a majority of whom must be made up of political appointees. There's slightly over 3,000 political appointees in the bureaucracies that have 2.3 million bureaucrats. The fifth executive order by Trump barred federal agencies from hiring employees on the basis of race, sex, or religion, requires hiring decisions to, quote, prioritize recruitment of individuals committed to improving the efficiency of the federal government, passionate about the ideals of our American Republic, I'm quoting from the order, and committed to upholding the rule of law and the United States Constitution. This is so wonderful and important. So wonderful and important. The sixth Donald Trump order is aimed at two specific groups and seeks to discourage federal workers from abusing their access to classified information. One of these two orders withdrew the national security clearance of the 51 intelligence community officials who signed an October 2020 letter who lied, claiming the Hunter Biden laptop computer had all the classic earmarks of Russian disinformation, quote unquote. They actually had all the classic earmarks of the Joe Biden crime family. The order also withdrew the clearance of John Bolton, who was Trump's national security advisor for a period in 2019. The order said Bolton's 2019 memoir posed a grave risk of leaking classified information. Matter of fact, the judge overseeing that, Royce Lamberth, was very upset about what John Bolton had done. Now, the last of the seven orders directed a 60-day freeze of all proposed regulations that have not been published in the Federal Register for comment. And it prevents the issuance of any new proposed rules not previously reviewed by a Trump appointee. Fantastic. Now, Jerry Connolly is a stupid-looking, stupid man who represents Fairfax County, Virginia, which has more bureaucrats than I think any other county in America. And so he's complaining. Even before Trump officially issued these seven executive orders, Jerry Connolly and three House colleagues introduced legislation designed to block the Schedule F, Schedule Policy Center order. Why? Because they don't want efficiencies. They don't want the policies of the election to be implemented. They want to undermine and sabotage. You voted big government out and efficient government in. Well, now it's time to trim the fat from big wireless. If you're still on the other big name providers, I have one question. Why? Pure Talk, my cell phone company, gives you the exact same service on the exact same towers with better customer service because they're based right here in the United States, all for half the cost. That's right. There's simply no need to spend $85 or $100 per person on your wireless bill, not when you could get unlimited talk, text, and 15 gigs of data with mobile hotspot, just $35 a month. My friends, the average family of four could save about $1,000 a year with Pure Talk while enjoying one of America's most dependable 5G networks. So cut the fat out of your wireless bill. Switch to Pure Talk by going to puretalk.com/Levin. Again, puretalk.com/LEVIN, and you'll save an additional 50% off your first month with Pure Talk, America's wireless company.
Nobody says it better than Mark Levin.
I'll go with what Mark Levin said, because nobody could say it better.
Call in now at 877-381-3811.
Yellow. It's just fantastic, this whole Enterprise AIM Act. And I know you're going to love it. Now, more on federal workforce and federal workers. Epic Times. Department of Justice directs prosecutors to probe officials who obstruct immigration enforcement. They're saying, we're putting down these rules. We're not going to be sabotaged. We're not going to be undermined. Nothing's coming through the back door. We want you to prosecute individuals who obstruct our policy initiative. This is fantastic. Department of Justice on January 21. That's Tuesday. By my calculation, that's yesterday, Mr. Producer. They sent a memorandum to all department employees from the acting Deputy Attorney General, Emil Bove. All department employees that the U.S. Constitution requires state and local actors to comply with federal immigration enforcement. So they're reaching beyond the feds. And they're saying, states, localities, you are not free to resist, obstruct, or otherwise fail to comply with lawful immigration-related commands from the executive branch. In fact, the federal government, via the executive branch, has plenary authority over immigration. The U.S. Attorney's Office, the memo said, in litigating components of the Department of Justice shall investigate incidences involving any such misconduct for potential prosecution, including for obstructing federal function, in violation of law that prohibits conspiracy to commit an offense against or fraud the United States federal government, Bove said in a 3-page document. Bove also pointed to another law that bars individuals from bringing illegal immigrants into the United States or harboring them in the country. Violators can receive up to 20 years in prison and can even face the death penalty if a violation results in the death of any person. President Donald Trump's administration has already started a mass deportation effort targeting illegal immigrants whose officials are public safety threats. The administration this week authorized arrests of illegal immigrants at churches and schools and other places previously designated off limits. Better include 7-Eleven, Mr. Producer. Just saying. Some local officials have expressed opposition to the deportation plan, like the pathetic Marxist crackpot Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson has said the city officials will not cooperate with federal immigration officers. That's fine. Charge them. Over the memo also said the civil division of the DOJ will look into laws, policy, activities that threaten to impede executive branch immigration efforts, such as by preventing the disclosure of information to federal authorities. DOJ officials will, where appropriate, take legal action to challenge such laws, Bo wrote. They're going on the offense. He said the Department of Justice will resume the practice of pursuing the most serious offense that prosecutors can prove. That practice was in place during the first Trump administration. Under former President Joe Biden, officials revoked the policy. Well, of course, the more illegal criminals, the better. Sure, the more foreign criminals, the better. The more gangs. We didn't have this Venezuelan gang when Donald Trump was president. Did we? No. No, so that memorandum went out. These guys aren't messing around. The Democrats now in the Senate are trying to slow walk some of these crucially important cabinet nominees. Pam Bondi. Kash Patel hasn't even had a hearing yet. They're trying to undermine Hegseth with lies, slow down that entire process. And on that point, you should know that there's a report out that Mitch McConnell, Lisa Murkowski, and Susan Collins may well and are perhaps leaning against voting for Hegseth for Secretary of Defense. So if you live in Kentucky, if you live in Alaska, or you live in Maine, I would encourage you, no threats, no anger, just make it clear, be concise, be classy. To Mitch McConnell, those of you in Kentucky, to Susan Collins, those of you in Maine, to Lisa Murkowski, those of you in Alaska, to let their offices know that you damn well expect them to vote to confirm Hegseth? You do not accept all the lies that are being used to try and destroy him? That you insist on having a reformer like him as Secretary of Defense? And that you will be watching this vote very, very closely to determine your activism and your vote when they come up for election. Collins was recently reelected. Murkowski a little bit before that. Mitch McConnell will hang on till he becomes Dianne Feinstein. But I'm serious about this, folks. And really, all over the country, any of you can make these calls. These senators, they vote on these issues. They're elected by these states, but these issues affect us. The name of the Secretary of Defense, that whole department, that affects us. Just be civil. That's all I ask. But just make it clear that you're going to take legitimate and peaceful means, campaign against these people, contribute money against these people, where relevant, vote against these people. Again, that's McConnell in Kentucky, Collins in Maine, and Murkowski in Alaska. Very, very important. Meanwhile, Epoch Times reports Fetterman votes with Republicans to advance Hegseth, says he won't switch to GOP. John Fetterman voted on January 21 with Republicans, that's in the committee, to advance the nomination of Pete Hegseth. Fetterman was the only member of the Democrat Party to join Republicans in passing a motion to proceed with Hegseth's nomination. Every other Democrat who voted, as well as the two independents who are all Democrat, that's Bernie Sanders, who's a Marxist Stalinist, and this guy Angus, whatever the hell his name is, in Maine. Parents named him after cattle. They voted against advancing the nomination. Fetterman's vote was not required to move the nomination forward because on the full Senate floor to move the nomination forward. Because Republicans hold 53 seats. A simple majority was enough. And by the way, they can even lose those 3 Republican senators I mentioned in the end on his confirmation vote, not process vote, confirmation vote, because J.D. Vance would be the tie-breaking vote at that point. They would join those 3 Republicans, 47 Democrats. So it'd be 50-50 if Fetterman doesn't join the Republicans, and J.D. Vance would break the tie. Fetterman, as you know, met with Trump and so forth. I have to say I like this guy more and more. He's not a solid conservative like we would hope, but he's not a radical kook like on the left. He's a moderate. He's an old-time Democrat. Nobody expected him to be one, but that's what he is. The president's pick for Secretary of Defense, said Bill Cassidy of Louisiana, has impressive academic qualifications, conducted himself very well in the Senate Armed Services Committee hearing. It's a commendable record of service in uniform. He assured me he will surround himself with a strong support team. I will vote for his confirmation, which is good that Cassidy said that. He can be a bit of a flake. And we already spent a lot of time on this recent affidavit by the ex-sister-in-law. The whole thing is a scam. The whole thing is an inside job. It's a setup job. It's obvious to everybody. I assume it's obvious to all Republicans in the United States Senate, especially in the Armed Services Committee, who should be mighty pissed off that they're being played this way. And Republicans generally should say, we've had enough of the Clarence Thomas, Kavanaugh, Bork treatment of our people. We've had enough. And we're not going to put up with it anymore. And fight it. And fight it, because our support for Hegseth has only strengthened. It's only gotten stronger. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
You voted big government out and efficient government in. Well, now it's time to trim the fat from big wireless. If you're still on the other big name providers, I have one question. Why? Pure Talk, my cell phone company, gives you the exact same service on the exact same towers with better customer service because they're based right here in the United States, all for half the cost. That's right. There's simply no need to spend $85 or $100 per person on your wireless bill, not when you can get unlimited talk, text, and 15 gigs of data with mobile hotspot Just $35 a month. My friends, the average family of four could save about $1,000 a year with Pure Talk while enjoying one of America's most dependable 5G networks. So cut the fat out of your wireless bill. Switch to Pure Talk by going to puretalk.com/Levin. Again, puretalk.com/Levin, and you'll save an additional 50% off your first month with Pure Talk, America's wireless company. More to the point of this setup against Hegseth, which isn't going to work, because I think the Republicans are onto this and have about enough of it. Ex-sister-in-law claiming Hegseth abused ex-wife, and by the way, the ex-wife says never happened, so that should end it right there. But the ex-sister-in-law who makes the claim is represented by a Democrat Party-connected law firm, our friends at Breitbart note, Christina Wong, Danielle Dietrich, the estranged ex-sister-in-law of Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, who's now claiming he abused his ex-wife, is a lifelong Democrat, is represented by a lawyer working for a prominent Democrat Party-connected firm. You see, this law firm and Ms. Dietrich have been working with Jack Reed, the Democrat ranking member on the committee, no doubt Schumer's mouthpiece, Schumer's hitman, and the rest of the Democrats. There's always these Democrat law firms with these individuals working with these Democrats. Have you noticed? Whether it was Thomas or Bork or whether it was Kavanaugh, now this. But it makes no sense. She signed an affidavit saying that the ex-wife of Hegseth said there was these abuses and these things, and the ex-wife says, no, there wasn't, and get the hell out of my life. And for the reasons I've posted, reasons I explained last night, he has joint custody of 3 kids with his ex-wife, Samantha. Judges don't do that. Masters don't do that if there's abuse or threats of abuse or any violence. In any way, Dietrich is represented by Lita Walker of Ballard Spahr. That's an old Philadelphia firm, which has a strong financial connection to Biden and some Democratic politicians, according to the Pennsylvania Capital Star. Here's what the news outlet reported. Individual attorneys at Ballard Spahr have been politically active for at least the last 30 years, according to data from Open Secrets, and their giving is skewed to Democrats. But the firm's political largesse nearly quadrupled in the Trump era. The previous high was $272,000 in 2008. In 2016, it was $846,000. By 2020, the political giving increased to more than it's almost $1 million. According to the Capital Star in Pennsylvania, the firm hosted a virtual inauguration event for former President Joe Biden in 2020 with the Pennsylvania and Delaware Democrat parties. It also reported that one of the biggest beneficiaries of their donations had been Mark Kelly, Democrat, Arizona, who attacked Hegseth during his confirmation hearings. And it goes on about their connections with Kamala Harris, their embrace of DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and so forth and so on. So in other words, it's a Democrat left-wing kook law firm. They destroyed that law firm. It was a pretty mainstream, top-of-the-line, old Philadelphia law firm. That's what it was. Apparently it's not anymore. Hegseth needs to be confirmed, and he needs to be confirmed immediately, because weird things are happening. I doubt you've ever heard of somebody by the name of Michael Dimino, D-I-M-I-N-O. I never had. He's been appointed as a deputy assistant secretary, and the area that he's focused on is the Middle East, even before Hegseth gets there. He'd be the new top official for Middle East policy at the Pentagon. He was on Glenn Greenwald's podcast in August 2024. I know our people slobber all over Glenn Greenwald. I don't slobber over him at all. It's a kook. And I want you to hear what he said to Glenn Greenwald. Cut 10, go.
The big question is, what is the U.S. going to do? And I think, it's funny, we talk about the U.S. as, slipping into war, getting dragged into war, whatever. Last I checked, we are the global hegemon. We are the undisputed global superpower, at least for the time being still. And if the United States wants to avoid participation in a war, it has all the agency in the world to do so. It can make it very clear to the Israelis, to the Egyptians, to everybody in the region that the United States is not going to participate in this. And I think you've seen some statements from the Biden administration about, trying to emphasize defensive support for Israel. But even that, can get you into potentially a situation where American F-18s are bombing targets in Lebanon and things like that. So it is a very slippery slope. I don't like to say that anything is inevitable, but I think you have to be concerned if you're a Middle East watcher over everything we've seen in the last 72 hours or so.
All right, that's enough. So he doesn't support defensive support of the state of Israel. Who recommended this guy? Which kook recommended this guy? I have a few ideas, and slipped him into a senior position at the Department of Defense before Hegseth got there. Who's behind this? Who's behind this guy? And may I call my personal opinion? Who's behind this kook? Ladies and gentlemen, forever wars, not being dragged into wars, has nothing to do with supporting allies that are under attack. Israel's facing a forever war ever since that state was established in 1948. It's been at war because of the enemies around them trying to destroy their country and eviscerate their people. That is, the Jews. They're not dragging anybody into their war. There aren't American soldiers fighting Israel's war. Israel doesn't want American soldiers fighting Israel's war. The Arabs, the Muslims, they get support from the communist Chinese, from the Koreans, from everybody who buys oil from them. We buy oil from them, and we shouldn't, thanks to Biden. They get support from the Russians and the Turks. And Israel gets support from us as Israel supports us with intelligence and advanced technology. But this Michael Dildo is his name? What's his name? I can't see again. I know.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, America. Mark Levin here. In the golden age of America. It's not Liberation Day. It's Liberation Year. Decade, hopefully. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you. Our number is 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. Oh, yes. This Elie Mystal of The Nation. I write about him, by the way, in my book, The Democrat Party Hates America. Why? Because he's a nut. That's why. He's a crackpot. And he's on with Joy Reid, America's bigot. And they're very worried that Donald Trump is going to be targeting Muslims. Isn't the problem that the jihadists and Islamists target us, Mr. Producer? Maybe they have this backwards. But then again, they are who they are. Nut jobs. 11, go.
Donald Trump revived his Muslim travel ban, and it is now recommending any actions necessary to protect the American people from the actions of foreign nationals who undermine and seek to undermine the fundamental constitutional rights of the American people, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, we're back to banning Muslims again, but here's the important thing to remember about the Muslim ban as we talk about all these other executive orders. Remember that the court gave him multiple shots at getting the Muslim ban across the finish line, right? The first time it was ruled unconstitutional. He came back again. And so as we talk about the rest of these orders, remember that even though I can say, oh, that's clearly unconstitutional, that's clearly not going to happen, this court, stacked as it is with Trump justices, will give Trump an opportunity to try them again and again and again until he gets them right. So,
boy, they really hate America, don't they? They really hate these two. The Nation famously blamed Harry Truman for the Cold War. It's another, in my view, Marxist front publication. I don't think they would be offended if I said so. It is what it is. They are what they are. This is the media today, and Of course, America's bigot is on MSLSD, and she drags in this kook, of course, who they're more than happy to hear. Then we have AOC on Instagram yesterday. She's still hung up on trying to tie Elon Musk to Nazis, when all she has to do is look at her colleagues and, in fact, look in the mirror, in my humble opinion. Just saying. Just saying. Cut 12, go.
This is the United States of America.
What is she, 4 years old, Mr. Badu? United States of America. Thank you, jerk. And no thanks to you either, jerk. Do you think she could pour a good drink, Mr. Badu? I don't drink, so I don't know. I don't know. Was she a good bartender? Did anybody know her when she was a bartender? Was she any good? I'm just curious. Was she good at anything? I mean, apparently not, but only in America. A Marxist bartender becomes a congressperson and spews her stupid poison. Go ahead.
This is the United States of America. And I don't care what Elon Musk is doing behind a presidential seal. In this country, we hate Nazis.
We do? We do? You mean all the Hitler youth that were in the street? The students for justice in Palestine? Care? So many imams praising Hitler? So many jihadist Islamists praising Hitler? They vote for you. Young lady, may I call you young lady? May I? Maybe not. It. Can I call you it? Cousin it, maybe? In the United States, we hate Nazis, except for we Marxists, Islamists, and jihadists. You know, carrying the flags around of the terrorist groups. We all saw it. We all saw it. And talking about exterminating the Jews and using the swastika sign on the Star of David, the Israeli flag. Oh, yes, yes. Does anybody remember AOC organizing the Democrats to oppose such things? I don't. I remember our great Speaker of the House doing that, Mike Johnson. I remember Mike Lawler doing that. I certainly don't remember AOC joining them, helping us at Columbia University. Where they love Nazis. They do. They really do. Go ahead.
A foundational defining thing. Two of probably the most foundational defining things about American
She's learned a new word, foundational. Foundational defining things. I just heard it. I know I heard it. Go ahead.
Is that we beat the Confederates and we beat the Nazis.
What do you mean we beat the Confederates? You are a Confederate. You're a Democrat. And the Democrat Party is Confederate. That is, they want to defy Donald Trump on this lawful implementation of our immigration laws. So who are the Confederates today? AOC. AOC. Go ahead.
I don't know what side people may be on today, but I still am not rocking with anyone sympathetic to Nazis.
Good for you, but you are. Tlaib and Omar. And, of course, yourself. Tlaib and Omar. Rocking with Nazis and Nazi sympathizers. CARE. Does CARE support AOC? Of course it does. They rock with Hamas. Hamas rocks with Nazis. Hamas is a Nazi operation. So you do rock with Nazis, may I say. AOC. You're a Nazi rocker. Go ahead.
Until I am 6 feet in the ground. Like, kind of foundational to me as a human.
Did she say foundational again, Mr. What's that, 3 times? Wow. Learned a new word. Go ahead.
And so, if you're cool and want to defend the Sig Heils and the Nazi salutes.
It's not Zig Heils. Zig Heils, you idiot. And listen, if you want to support the Zig Heils, you supported the protesters, the rioters, the vicious Islamists who were attacking Jews. You didn't do anything to fight it. You didn't join a handful of other Democrats, like Richie Torres, who is a liberal Democrat in the district right next to you in the Bronx, but is a good guy. He has integrity, he has morality. And he rejects the Nazis and he rejects the Islamo-Nazis. You embrace the Islamo-Nazis. Again, including Tlaib and Omar. Go ahead.
All the whatever you want to do, that's on you. I'm on the opposite side of that.
Wow, you're something else. She's on the opposite side, and she made those views known all during the Islamo-Nazi marches, the Hitler Youth. There she was, fighting them, trying to protect the innocent Jewish students, trying to protect the American flag. Oh, yeah, she was there. You may not have seen her. That's because you need glasses, you see. But she was there. She was fighting the good fight against the Nazis. Tell me, has she done anything on the floor of the House to fight the Nazis? Has she introduced anything to fight the Nazis? Has she? Of course not. Well, how's she fighting the Nazis other than embracing them? She's not. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
You know, ladies and gentlemen, for the last several months, Life, Liberty, and Levin has been competing against football. On Saturdays, college football, ratings through the roof. On Sundays, professional football, ratings through the roof. I enjoy football myself. This Saturday, there will be no football. And this Sunday, there are two big games to determine who will be in the Super Bowl. And after this Sunday, I'm free. Free at last, Mr. Producer. Thank God Almighty, I'm free at last. Now, what does that mean? I'm not up against football. Do you know, up against Life, Liberty, and Levin last Sunday, 36 million viewers were watching football. And the 8 p.m. hour, we're right in the teeth of it, right in the middle of the games, which is why I say, please DVR the program, so if you need to, you can watch it later if you're not going to watch it live. And our numbers are still fantastic, but what will happen, what happens every year, is you will see that the ratings begin to explode, where we crush all comers because of you, my fantastic audience. That's right. Can't wait. That'll be a hell of a game against the Philadelphia Eagles and the Washington Commanders. Washington Commanders, won't it, Mr. Producer? I know, you're a Steeler fan. Take your chin off the floor and hang in there. And then we've got the Buffalo Bills against the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, I don't want to upset people in and around Kansas City, but a lot of the nation are rooting for the Buffalo Bills. They just are. And are very troubled by the referees. That's the rep. Whether you like it or not, that's the rep. I'm not saying it. I'm just telling you. I will say this to my friends in the city of brotherly love. If the Eagles don't get their act together, rather than barely crossing the finish line and winning, they're going to lose to the Commanders. They need to have a big game. I know Jalen Hurts is hurt. First he had the concussion. Now he's got a knee issue and so forth, but he's really going to have to step up and get the ball to some of these receivers. Of course, we have the greatest running back. Washington is not invincible. Fact is, the Philadelphia team has two massive front lines, defense and offense. Tremendous running game, thanks to you-know-who. Great receivers. A very, very good quarterback when he's healthy, but he's going to have to step it up. And I think the main problem with Jalen Hurts is he takes a long time to throw the ball. He's one of the slower passers in the league. That said, he's very fast. He's agile. And when he's on his number, he's really very difficult to beat. The other thing the Eagles are able to do assuming they do it, is really beat down the other team into the second half. And that requires a lot of running. Because their linemen are just massive. I mean, they got like two guys who are 6'8", 367 pounds, 358 pounds. That's just abnormal. This guy Carter, this defensive lineman, they always have to double team him. You got two guys who are 6'4", 6'5", on the offensive line on the other team, 320, 330 pounds, trying to block this guy who's 6'8", almost 370 pounds, and extremely athletic, extremely fast, very agile. And the refs have been, in my view, very unfair to him. It's as if they call him, even before he moves. But what do I know? Except I watch this stuff. But we'll have two powerful Life, Liberty, and Levin programs, 8 p.m. Eastern Saturday, 8 p.m. Eastern Sunday. We will break loose of football just a matter of a week now or so. We will continue to cream all the competition. And we're getting the best numbers we've ever gotten. But these guys, they show up a little later in the night, a little early in the night. Look at me. Yeah, okay. Try 8 p.m. on the weekends. Brutal. I have a friend of mine who shall be nameless. He complains every time there's a football game. And he said, well, gee willikers, or words to that effect. I'm going to be on at 9. I got to face a football team. Hey, pal, let me tell you, I do that every damn weekend, Saturday and Sunday. And because these guys aren't taking knees anymore, stuff like that, people are back and they're watching football. People are watching college football. They're watching professional football. The quarterbacks are unbelievable, I think, in the professional football these days. I've never seen so many who are so great. I'm being honest about it. I mean, you look at Buffalo, you look at the Chiefs, those are two Hall of Fame quarterbacks. Same with Philadelphia and the Commanders. Those are two, just a matter of time, Hall of Fame quarterbacks. Very, very remarkable, I think. But Life, Liberty, and Levin is really the only show at 8 p.m. on the weekends I can even rate anything against this tide. And I wanted to get to this. Donald Trump has laid the law down to Vladimir Putin. It's funny how they say, Donald Trump, with the Russians. That was all BS from beginning. Trump demands Putin make a deal on Ukrainian war or face taxes, tariffs, and sanctions. This is Breitbart. And what did he write? He put on social media, True Social, I'm not looking to hurt Russia. I love the Russian people and always have a very good relationship with President Putin. And this despite the radical left's Russia hoax. We must never forget that Russia helped us win the Second World War, losing almost 60 million lives in the process. All that being said, I'm going to do Russia, whose economy is failing, and President Putin a big, very big favor. Settle now and stop this ridiculous war. It's only going to get worse. If we don't make a deal, and soon, I have no other choice but to put high levels of taxes, tariffs, and sanctions on anything sold by Russia to the United States and various other participating countries. Let's get this war, which never should have started, over now. There you go.
Liberty's voice, Mark Levin. Talk with that voice now. 877-381-3811.
Okay, let us continue, shall we? Let's take some calls. Let's go to Tom, Rensselaer, New York. The great W-Ham, W-H-A-M. Tom, go right ahead, please.
That's WQBK. Talk
WQBK. No, it's got to be W-H-A-M because they wrote it here. Anyway, Go right ahead.
Mark, regarding the president's declaration on the birthright citizenship, there was a case, and maybe you know about it. It's U.S. versus Wong.
Everybody knows about that case, and everybody looks at that case where the Supreme Court, without any basis whatsoever, and by the way, they were talking about legal immigrants, ruled that the child of a legal immigrant who was in the United States and his wife could be treated as a citizen. It reversed two prior Supreme Court rulings. It did not rule that there's broadly birthright citizenship, which is what people use to cite that case. It was in the end of the last century. The case is defective in many ways. The Supreme Court's not bound by it because it is defective in many ways. But yes, I'm quite familiar with that case. I've read it about 3 times.
Mark, thank you very much for taking my call.
You better believe it, brother. Thank you, Tom. Let's stay in New York, shall we? Bill, Albany, New York, the great XM satellite. Bill, go right ahead, please.
Yes, Mark. I'm so happy. I'm so happy that Solomon Gomorrah, a.k.a. the Democratic Party, didn't win the last election. And not only that, God is true to his word. I know there's a God. Because he said in the Bible, bless those that bless thee and curse those that curse thee. And look what he did to those Iranians for killing those 1,200 Jews on October the 7th, 2023. He mean what he says, okay? And not only that, I'm just so shocked that people will continue to support the Democratic Party when the Democratic Party are nothing but God playing crackpots with the rapist attitude, with racial overtones. And sooner or later, to me, they are traitor to the living. They claim they want life, but they're in favor of abortion. I'm totally pro-life. And I just pray that God would have mercy upon this country and bless us. And I appreciate
you are a very classy gentleman. I can tell it in your voice. I can tell by the substance of what you say. You're a man of deep faith. And I want to thank you for coming on the program and speaking as you did, Bill. God bless you, my friend. Let's see. Let us go to Christina, Springfield, Missouri. I think we call it the Show Me State, but don't show us, Christina. On the Mark Levin app. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. I won't show you, I promise.
All right.
So, hey, Mark, been a long-time listener. I just want to say that I am a Department of Veterans Affairs nurse, and I feel like that we have had a disproportionate view of what we do, and I want to be the voice of those on the frontline staff that say that we are struggling with staffing. And this budget constraints that was placed due to the hiring freeze has been a significant impact on our ability to care for the veterans. And so I am very hopeful.
How so exactly?
Pardon me?
How so? How so?
The hiring constraints has been that
I'm saying how so? Are there nurses that were supposed to be hired that aren't being hired? And I'm just curious.
Nurses, doctors, anything that...
no, I understand that from a macro position. You work in a specific department, a specific hospital. So what is it that you're not able to fill? What positions? A particular doctor or nurse? What are you missing?
Doctors, nurses, anything related to...
No, doctors and nurses. I'm asking you where you work specifically. What are you not... Are you missing a nurse or 3 nurses that you had slots that were open that aren't being filled? What's going on exactly?
We have, well, specifically in Springfield, there's four physicians that haven't been filled and 4 nurses that haven't been filled. And so that impacts our ability to provide care.
Out of how many?
We have 13 teams, which provide approximately...
So what do you have, 100 doctors, 150, 100 nurses, kind of ballpark?
Well, for the Springfield Clinic, we have 13 teams, and they provide care for 1,200 patients per team.
But how many are on the teams?
That's what I'm saying, 1,200 patients per team.
How many nurses and doctors are on each team?
There's 1 doctor, 1 nurse, 1 LPN, and a clerk.
And you have 13 of these?
Correct.
And all of a sudden, because Donald Trump's elected 48 hours ago, puts a freeze on, you can't serve the people?
That is exactly right, because I've had positions that I've pushed forward that have immediately stopped hiring.
Well, do you understand why?
I totally understand why. But
why?
The impact is...
Obviously, the impact, whether it's the Veterans Administration, the Agriculture Department, the Department of Energy, is that you can't hire people. It's a 60-day freeze. They want to see what they actually need. They want to understand what has to happen. What I'm telling you is that there were 2.3 million bureaucrats when Joe Biden came into office, and he hired over 600,000 over the course of 4 years. That's a lot. I don't know why your VA hospital or your region didn't get what it needed, but that's a lot, and somebody needs to sort this through. And so that's what's taking place, whether it's the VA or any other place. And it may create inconveniences. One of the things Biden did is he kind of destroyed the ability for veterans to choose other hospitals and other doctors outside of the governmental system. He made it much more difficult. So if that had been the case, veterans who felt that they weren't getting the care they needed or on time would have been able to participate more in the private sector, but that avenue was cut off. I suspect that's coming back. I'm sure they want to look at why all 600 and some thousand additional slots were added. Where in the bureaucracy, it's a massive enterprise. So these things will happen. These things will happen. But honestly, they need to happen because the system's going bankrupt. And if we don't have enough money to fund Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid, we don't have enough money to fund the VA, what's happening in your region or whatever you might term it is going to be a pittance compared to what happens in every region of every part of the country to our veterans and everybody else. You understand what I'm saying? Uh-oh. What did I do? Offend? I don't know. I didn't think I said anything offensive. I'm explaining the reality of the situation. It's just the nature of it. They've got to get their hands around this and figure out exactly what's taking place because there's been an enormous increase in the civilian population of the bureaucracy. Enormous. And they're trying to figure out what to do about it. They're trying to figure out who's gotten what, why there's been this massive increase in the bureaucracy. Certainly, there's not a concomitant increase in the private sector. But, yes, it's going to impact certain offices and certain places. The freeze is for 60 days. So I'm sure they'll be taking a look at the VA as well. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Let's slip a few calls in here before we lose the signal. Let's see. Let's go to Linda, West Orange, New Jersey, the great WABC. Linda, how are you?
Good. How are you, Mark? Thank you for taking my call. I listen to you all the time. I love you. You're absolutely wonderful.
And thank you again.
I have a question, though. I have two things. If Bernie Sanders talk about the billionaires paying more money, why don't he also just cut off all the illegal money that we're spending on all the illegals? Just cut off
that
all
is
that
a
money. Great
point. That is a great point. He never talks about cutting off money to people who should never get it, does he?
Good
for you.
That's what makes me so. That makes me so mad. And then also, can the Jan 6 prisoners sue the Jan 6 committee for unconstitutional?
No, I'm afraid not. Well, let me think about that. Maybe they can bring a civil suit, but it'd be hard to connect up what they did outside of their speech and debate activities, the referrals to the Department of Justice, because those referrals were really focused on Donald Trump and a handful of others. I don't think so.
Okay.
But they might be able to bring civil suits against the executive branch.
Yeah, that's what I was hoping they could do something. They deserve to get some money back because those people have been in there for too long, and they didn't deserve any of that. They did not deserve any of what happened to them.
Well, maybe some of the slip and fall lawyers listening to this program in the Washington, D.C. area could actually do something rather than chase ambulances and see if they can help these folks. Linda, great call. Thank you, my friend. John, Chicago, Illinois, on the Mark Levin app. John, go right ahead.
Hello, Mark. Thank you so much for taking my call.
You got it.
I got to talk to you about this. I'm a retired firefighter, 40 years in Chicago.
Wow,
and
God
my
bless
son,
you, man.
Thank you. My son was a Marine.
Hold on. Can I tell you, I watched this show. What the hell is it called?
Wanted to teach English and see the Asian culture, okay?
Say that again?
My son, when he got out of the
Uh-oh, what happened, Rich? I couldn't hear him at first, and now he's gone? Well, I want to thank Westwood One for their fantastic call system here that we can't seem to get fixed. I don't know what the hell's going on. I enjoy talking to you folks, but it gets tough at some points. Let's try again. Shall we jump back into the gene pool? I think we should. Sam and John, you call back. If you call back tomorrow, we'll grab you. Crescent City, California, the Mark Levin app. The Mark Levin app is hot tonight. Go right ahead, Sam.
Mr. Levin, can you hear me?
Yes, but I prefer Mr. 12.
My grandson calls you Mr. Levin. Got a question. Out of all the people that Mr. Biden forgot to pardon, I think the one who knows where all the skeletons are buried, he forgot to pardon.
Himself?
Which would be Mrs. Jill Biden.
Excuse me. Dr. Jill. She worked very hard for that degree.
Yep, she knows where everything's buried. She knows all the accounts. She was probably instrumental in running things the last several years. So why can't we go after her? Fair is fair.
Yeah, but I don't think Trump would do that. I really don't. I think he has some moral lines, even though Biden does not. Now, in Israel, they're going after the first lady there, after Benjamin Netanyahu's wife, Sarah, because the radical left-wing Marxists are absolutely nuts. But you do make an interesting point, but I don't see it. That is, I don't see that happening. What great callers. Thank you, folks. Fantastic. We salute our armed forces, police officers, firefighters, emergency personnel, our truckers, our brothers and sisters in Ukraine. That's right, Ukraine. And our brothers and sisters in Israel, we have your back. Trust me on this. And you, the American people, God bless you. See you tomorrow.